You are a cardinal in the year 1501, living in a palace of unimaginable luxury. Your walls are adorned with frescoes by Raphael, your wine is served in golden goblets, and your every whim is attended to by a small army of servants. You are one of the most powerful men in Christendom, a prince of the church, a direct successor to the apostles. And tonight you have received an invitation that fills your soul with a cold, primal dread. The summons is not to a sacred consistory or a theological debate. It is a private note, delivered by a masked servant, requesting your presence at the Vatican Palace after dark. The seal on the letter is unmistakable, the raging bull of the Borgia family. It is an invitation from Pope Alexander VI himself, as the sun sets over Rome, casting long shadows through the corrupt and filthy streets. You make your way toward the heart of the Catholic world. The air is thick with the stench of decay and incense, a perfect metaphor for the city itself. Swiss guards, their faces impassive beneath steel helmets, wave you through gates that swing open into a world of obscene opulence. You are not heading toward the Sistine Chapel or the papal apartments. You are being led down a hidden staircase, deep beneath the foundations of St. Peter's Basilica, to a chamber few have ever seen, and even fewer have dared to describe. The sounds of laughter, music, and something else, something animalistic and unrestrained, echo off the ancient stone walls. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You know the stories. The whispers of what happens in the shadows of the Vatican. The tales of the Borgia Pope's appetites, so depraved they would make a Roman emperor blush. You clutch your rosary, but the beads feel like a meaningless trinket in your hand. Tonight, you are not a man of God. You are a guest at the most forbidden orgy in history, hosted by the man who is supposed to. Be the vicar of Christ on earth. Before we descend into the darkness of Alexander VI's inner sanctum, if you are ready to explore the hidden truths of history that powerful institutions try to erase, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. We are a community of truth seekers, piecing together the real story of our past, no matter how dark it gets. And please comment below with the word Vatican. Let me know you're listening, that you understand the terrifying allure of absolute power corrupted beyond all recognition. What you are about to hear is not just a scandalous tale of sex and decadence. It is a psychological autopsy of a man who held the keys to heaven and used them to unlock the gates of hell. It is the story of how the highest office in Christianity became a throne for a monster, and how a single night of debauchery exposed the rotten core of an entire era. To understand the darkness of this night, we must first understand the man who orchestrated it. Rodrigo Borgia was not born a monster. He was born into a world of ruthless ambition and dynastic warfare where power was the only god worth worshipping. His uncle, Pope Calixtus III, paved his way into the church, not out of piety, but out of a desire to build a family empire. Rodrigo was handsome, charming, and fiercely intelligent. He understood the mechanics of power better than he understood the scriptures. He rose through the ranks of the church with a singular focus, accumulating wealth, titles, and lovers with equal fervor. For him, the cardinal's hat was not a sacred calling. It was a political tool, a stepping stone. His mistresses were not secrets, they were public knowledge. His favorite, Venosa de Catanei, bore him 4 children whom he adored with a possessive passion: Juan, Cesare, Lucrezia, and Geoffrey. They were not his shameful bastards, they were his dynasty, his Borgia princes and princesses who would inherit the world he was building. This was the core of Rodrigo's psychology. A complete separation of his role as a churchman from his life as a feudal patriarch. He saw no contradiction in preaching chastity while fathering children, in celebrating mass while plotting murder, in selling indulgences to forgive sins while committing every one of them himself. In his mind, God had given him power, and to not use it for his own pleasure and the advancement of his family would be the true sin. In 1492, after a conclave infamous for its bribery and corruption, Rodrigo Borgia bought the papacy. He literally outbid his rivals, using chests of gold delivered in the dead of night to secure the votes he needed. When he emerged as Pope Alexander VI, he did not see it as a spiritual victory. It was the ultimate acquisition. He was now the king of the world, answerable to no one, not even God. The Vatican was not a church, it was his personal court, the papal teeth. Treasury was his personal bank account, and the souls of millions of believers were his to play with. This was the man who now sat on the throne of St. Peter. The orgies were not merely about sexual release, they were a tool of control, a dark sacrament of the Borgia family. To be invited was to be granted access to the inner circle. To participate was to be complicit, to hold a secret so damning that your fate was forever tied to theirs. It was a psychological prison dressed up as a privilege. And on this night in 1501, the guest of honor, the centerpiece of the Pope's most forbidden fantasy, was his own daughter. The Borgia family was not a family. It was a corporation of corruption, and each member played a specific terrifying role. To understand the horror of the chestnut banquet, you must meet the key players in this divine tragedy. First, there was Cesare Borgia, the eldest surviving son. The golden child turned into a monster of pure, calculated ambition. Cesare was everything his father wanted in an heir, ruthless, intelligent, and utterly without mercy. He was made a cardinal as a teenager, but the robes of the church were a cage for his violent nature. He preferred the sword to the cross, and his ambitions lay in conquering Italy, not saving souls. He was the family's weapon, the enforcer, the one who made problems disappear permanently. He shared his father's appetites, but none of his charm. His darkness was cold and sharp, a dagger in the shadows. Then there was Lucrezia Borgia. History has painted her as a poisoner, a femme fatale, a participant in her family's crimes. But the truth is far more tragic. Lucrezia was the prize, the pawn, the ultimate bargaining chip in her father's political games. Married off for the first time at just 13, her life was a series of strategic alliances arranged by Alexander and Cesare. She was beautiful, educated, and graceful, the perfect Renaissance lady. But beneath the surface, she was a prisoner in a gilded cage, conditioned from birth to obey her family's ruthless command. Yes, her father adored her, but his love was possessive and grotesque. He used her beauty and innocence as a tool, even as he orchestrated the annulment of her marriages when they were no longer politically convenient. The occasion for this particular night of debauchery was a public celebration. Lucrezia's marriage to her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon, had just been annulled by her own father, the Pope, on the outrageous grounds that the marriage was never consummated. The real reason was that the Borgias had found a more politically advantageous match. To celebrate this cynical move, Alexander VI threw a public banquet in the Vatican. 50 of Rome's most beautiful courtesans were hired to entertain the guests, dancing with the dignitaries and churchmen. But this was merely the appetizer. The public spectacle was a mask for the private horror to come. As the official banquet wound down, the inner circle, the cardinals, the ambassadors, the Borgia family themselves, were invited to a more exclusive gathering. This was the real event. The doors were locked. The masks came off. The scene that unfolded was not a simple party. It was a meticulously staged theatrical production of sin. Servants stripped the tables of food and replaced them with vast quantities of wine. The courtesans, and later even respectable noblewomen who were pressured to attend, shed their clothes. The music shifted from formal dances to something wild and pagan. And then, the main event began. Alexander VI, Cesare, and Lucrezia presided over the chaos like perverted deities. The Pope watched with gleeful approval as his children and his guests descended into a drunken, sexual free-for-all. But the most infamous detail, the one that sears this event into history, was the contest. He summoned his servants to bring in a large sack of chestnuts. Then he ordered them to scatter the chestnuts across the floor. He proclaimed a challenge for the male guests: crawl on all fours, naked, and compete to see who could collect the most chestnuts. The winners would receive the sexual favors of the most beautiful women in the room, whom the Pope and his son personally awarded like trophies. The scene that followed was one of utter degradation. Princes of the church, ambassadors of powerful kingdoms, and Italian nobles crawled naked on the marble floor, grunting and scrambling like animals, fighting over chestnuts under the laughter of the Borgias. This was Alexander VI's masterpiece of control. He wasn't just hosting a party, he was breaking powerful men. He was reducing them to their most base, animalistic instincts. He was proving that beneath the silk robes and the titles, they were no better than beasts. And in doing so, he was demonstrating his absolute power over them. The most disturbing figure in this entire tableau was Lucrezia. Was she a willing participant or the ultimate victim, forced to witness and endorse the spectacle as a final act of psychological breaking? The orgy was the key that unlocked every door. The next day, Alexander pushed through political favors as all involved were compromised. The Vatican became a machine producing spiritual authority and absolute corruption in one night under one man, Alexander VI. His death came ironically after drinking poisoned wine meant for a rival. Rotting from within, consumed by his own decay, he died unloved and unburied in glory. His son Cesare faded in exile. Lucrezia reinvented herself, but never escaped the shadow. The legacy? A mirror of power gone mad. Sin made into power, morality ripped apart, the papacy corrupted down to its bones. The laughter from those chambers still echoes in history, and warns us that no man, no matter how holy, stands above judgment.